Last year, a 10-year-old bourbon with a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $150 sold on the secondary market for nearly $1,000. Down the shelf, a 12-year-old barrel-proof bourbon from one of the most awarded distilleries in America was sitting there for $75. Nobody was fighting over it. That is the bourbon market in a single snapshot. The bottles everyone chases are rarely the ones worth chasing. Today, we are calling out 5 brands robbing you blind and 5 that deliver honest age, real proof, and exceptional value for what you pay. Number 5 on the robbing you blind list, Maker's Mark Wood Finishing Series. Maker's Mark built its reputation on a simple, approachable wheated bourbon. Red wax, soft flavor, easy to drink. Nothing wrong with that. But over the past few years, the brand has rolled out a rotating cast of limited edition releases under the Wood Finishing Series banner. Different staves, different names, different price tags. Each one runs between $70 and $100 depending on where you find it. Here is the problem. Most of these taste like Maker's Mark with a slight twist. The base spirit is the same, the age is undisclosed. The stave finishing, while interesting on paper, rarely delivers enough complexity to justify doubling or tripling the price of a standard bottle. Reviewers have consistently pointed out that these releases are sweet, sometimes unbalanced, and rarely as interesting as the label suggests. Meanwhile, Maker's 46 cask strength sits right there on the shelf at a lower price, with bolder structure and far more flavor. The Wood Finishing Series is not bad bourbon, it is overpriced bourbon, hiding behind limited edition marketing. Number 4, Eagle Rare 10-year. On paper, Eagle Rare looks like a steal. 10-year age statement, Buffalo Trace distillery pedigree, and a manufacturer's suggested retail price of around $40. That would make it one of the best values in bourbon if you could actually buy it for $40. But you cannot. Not anymore. Eagle Rare has become one of the most hunted bottles in the Buffalo Trace portfolio. Stores that do get it either hide it behind the counter, bundle it with other bottles, or mark it up to $75 or more. On the secondary market, it regularly crosses $100. And here is the part that stings. When you do finally taste it, what you get is a slightly smoother, slightly more refined version of standard Buffalo Trace. At 10 years old and only 90 proof, it does not have the depth or punch that a decade in oak should deliver. Multiple reviewers have described it as a nicer bottle experience rather than a significantly better liquid experience. At the manufacturer's suggested retail price, Eagle Rare is a solid bourbon. At the prices you will actually pay for it, you are funding someone else's markup for a bottle that drinks like a $40 pour. Weller Special Reserve. This is the bottle that launched 1,000 bourbon hunters into madness. Weller Special Reserve has a manufacturer's suggested retail price of about $25. It is a wheated bourbon from Buffalo Trace, meaning it uses wheat instead of rye as the secondary grain. Smooth, sweet, easy to drink. Nothing offensive. But then someone published an article pointing out that Weller uses the same mash bill as Rip Van Winkle. Same grains, same distillery. And overnight, a $25 bottom shelf bourbon became the holy grail for people who could not find Pappy. The problem with this logic is enormous. The mash bill is just one part of the equation. Barrel selection, aging location, aging duration, and blending all play massive roles in the final product. By that same logic, you could drink benchmark bourbon and call it George T. Stagg, because they share a mash bill too. Today, Weller Special Reserve sells for $50 to $125 at most retailers. Some online stores listed above $60. For a bourbon with no age statement, 90 proof, and a thin mouthfeel that even fans describe as lacking depth, that is a spectacular waste of money. The poor man's Pappy is not Pappy, it is not even close. Number 2. Blanton's Original Single Barrel. This is the bourbon that proved a bottle can be more famous than the liquid inside it. Blanton's has a manufacturer-suggested retail price, MSRP, of around $65. On the secondary market, it regularly sells for $150 or more. Some retailers charge $200 without blinking. The reason has almost nothing to do with what is in the glass. It is the bottle, the iconic grenade shape, and the collectible horse and jockey stoppers in 8 different poses that spell out Blanton's. Collectors chase entire sets. Instagram is full of people flexing their Blanton's shelves. But at 93 proof with no age statement, the actual bourbon is underwhelming at inflated prices. Reviewers consistently note thin flavor, low complexity, and significant variability between barrels. Some bottles are genuinely good, others are forgettable. At MSRP, Blanton's is a perfectly fine bourbon with a beautiful presentation. The problem is that almost nobody pays MSRP. If you are spending $150 on a bottle of Blanton's, you are buying a trophy, not a tasting experience. There are a dozen bottles in that price range that will outperform it every single time. Number 1 on the robbing you blind list, Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year. This is where the bourbon scarcity machine reaches peak absurdity. Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year has a manufacturer-suggested retail price of $150. That is the price Buffalo Trace recommends. What people actually pay is somewhere between $800 and $1,000 on the secondary market. Some stores charge even more for a 10-year-old bourbon at 107 proof. Let that math sink in. You are paying nearly $1,000 for a bourbon that spent 10 years in a barrel. Knob Creek sells a 12-year-old bourbon for $60. Elijah Craig offers barrel-proof bourbon with age statements pushing 12 years for $75. But slap the Van Winkle name on the label and suddenly 10 years of aging costs 10 times more than 12 years from another distillery. The bourbon itself is good, nobody disputes that. Wheated, smooth, complex enough for serious drinkers. But at secondary market prices, you are not paying for the liquid. You are paying for the mythology, the legacy of Julian Pappy Van Winkle, the Buffalo Trace allocation system, the lottery tickets, and camping outside liquor stores. Every dollar you spend above the manufacturer-suggested retail price is a dollar that tells the market this insanity should continue. Now, let us flip the script. These next 5 bourbons deliver honest age statements, real proof, and exceptional quality for what they cost. No lottery required, no camping in parking lots, just good bourbon sitting on shelves waiting for you to pick it up. Number 5 on the worth it list, Old Ezra 7-year barrel strength. This bourbon comes from Luxco, now part of the MGP family, but the liquid inside was contract distilled at Heaven Hill in Bardstown, Kentucky. Heaven Hill is one of the most respected bourbon producers in America, and this particular mash bill has won blind tastings against bottles costing 3 times as much. Old Ezra 7-year gives you a stated 7 years of barrel aging at barrel strength, which typically lands around 117 proof. The price sits between $40 and $60 depending on your market. For that money, you are getting a barrel-proof bourbon with a real age statement from one of the best distilleries in the country. Rich caramel, dark fruit, baking spices, and a long, warm finish. This bottle punches so far above its weight class that seasoned bourbon drinkers often buy multiples when they find it. No hype, no allocation, just exceptional bourbon at an honest price. If you are finding this helpful, consider subscribing. We cover spirits every week and help you spend smarter at the liquor store. Number 4. Henry McKenna 10-year single barrel bottled in bond. Henry McKenna is produced by Heaven Hill, the same company behind Elijah Craig. It carries a 10-year age statement, is bottled at exactly 100 proof under the bottled in bond designation, and comes from a single barrel, meaning every bottle has its own unique character. The price sits between $55 and $70 depending on your market. The bottled in bond designation is not just marketing. It is a federal standard established in 1897 that requires the bourbon to be the product of one distillery, one distilling season, aged at least 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, and bottled at exactly 100 proof. Henry McKenna exceeds that 4-year minimum by 6 years. 10 years at 100 proof for under $70. This bottle won Best in Show Whiskey at the 2019 San Francisco World Spirits Competition, and while the award made it harder to find, it is still far more accessible than most allocated bourbon. That is the definition of worth your money. Number 3. Knob Creek 12-Year. Knob Creek is part of the Jim Beam Small Batch Collection, and the 12-year expression is arguably the best regularly available bourbon in the entire Beam portfolio. It spends 12 years in new charred American oak, and it is bottled at 100 proof. The price is around $60. Double-digit age-stated bourbons from major Kentucky distilleries used to be common. They are not anymore. Most brands have either dropped their age statements entirely or pushed their older expressions into limited release territory at triple-digit prices. Knob Creek 12-year bucks that trend completely. Reviewers describe dark caramel, vanilla, baked apple, chocolate, and refined oak, without the harshness that often comes with longer aging. Breaking Bourbon called it the best non-limited edition Knob Creek small batch to date. At $60 for a 12-year-old bourbon bottled at 100 proof, there is almost nothing in the market that matches this combination of age, proof, and price. You can walk into most liquor stores and find it on the shelf right now. Number 2. Wild Turkey Rare Breed. Wild Turkey does not put an age statement on the Rare Breed label. The company has confirmed that the blend includes barrels ranging from 6 to 12 years old. Master distiller Eddie Russell and his father Jimmy Russell, who has been making bourbon at Wild Turkey for over 70 years, personally select and blend those barrels. The result is a barrel-proof bourbon, typically around 116 proof, that costs roughly $45. For $45, you are getting barrel-proof bourbon blended by two of the most experienced distillers alive, using barrels that include whiskey aged over a decade. There is no allocation, no lottery, no limit. Rare Breed has been sitting on shelves for years, delivering consistent, bold, full-flavored bourbon, while people drive past it, chasing bottles they will never fend. Rich honey, pepper, vanilla, toasted oak, and a finish that goes on and on. This is what happens when a distillery focuses on the liquid instead of the marketing. Number 1 on the worth it list is Elijah Craig Barrelproof. This bottle makes the entire overpriced bourbon market look foolish. Elijah Craig Barrelproof is produced by Heaven Hill, the nation's largest independent family-owned distillery. Every batch carries a specific age statement printed right on the label, and those ages have historically ranged from 10 to 12 years or more. It is bottled at Barrelproof, which varies by batch but typically falls between 120 and 130 proof. The price is around $75. $75 for a 12-year barrel-proof bourbon from one of the most awarded whiskey programs in the world. Elijah Craig Barrel. Proof has won Whiskey Advocate's Whiskey of the Year, and it has earned double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. Batch after batch, it delivers rich caramel, dark chocolate, toasted oak, baking spices, and a finish that lingers for minutes. It does all of this while sitting on shelves in liquor stores across the country. Compare that to paying $1,000 for an old Rip Van Winkle 10-year or $150 for a bottle of Blanton's that might be hit or miss. At around $6.50 per year of age, Elijah Craig Barrelproof is not just the best value in barrel-proof bourbon. It might be the best value in all of American whiskey. The bourbon market is correcting. Secondary market prices are dropping. Distilleries are cutting production for the first time in years. The hype cycle that turned mediocre bottles into status symbols is running out of fuel. And the brands that always focused on what is in the glass instead of what is on the label are finally getting the attention they deserve. Your next great pour is not behind a velvet rope. It is on the shelf right now, waiting for you to pick it up. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing, and we will see you in the next one.